Now, of the two new Mahindra EVs based on the INGLO architecture, the XEV 90, as the name suggests, and as you can sort of get a feeler from just with the looks, is the one that is more traditionally Mahindra and the one that is a bit more luxury focused. So if you aren't used to electric cars, then this might be the one for you. So let's just see what the XEV 90 is actually like. Now start driving the XEV 90 and it's a bit more familiar, the overall driving experience, considering there is more than a hint of the XUV 700 still in this car. So yeah, in terms of the seating position, again it has that you sit fairly high up, you have a flattish kind of bonnet in front of you, these pillars, and the overall layout is much more like an ICE car. Although I must say that the overall seating position, the way the steering reacts to you isn't very different, it's only slightly different. And that's really down to this more traditional layout of the dashboard. Fairly comfortable as an everyday car. Now coming to the driving experience, again, hardware and the mechanicals are identical between the BE60 and the XEV 90. So very broadly, they also drive similarly. So again, this electric powertrain delivers power in a linear, clean fashion. There's not that big, huge lump of torque that's hitting you every time you press down on the accelerator. And like in the BE60, you do find that the performance, it's there right up to over 100 kmph, about 120ish is the fastest that we've gone, and it's fine. I mean, it's still pulling there, so overtakes and all of those maneuvers are not really any issue. Having said that, these are fast cars. They are the fastest cars made by an Indian manufacturer ever. So this one does 0 to 100 in about 6.8 seconds. So yeah, you do have that sense that you are faster than most other things on the road, which does create a good sense of luxury. Now something I'm noticing at these high speeds is the wind noise. There is a bit more of it compared to the BE60. Maybe it's down to these bigger mirrors. But yeah, other than that, they broadly drive very similarly. And that goes with the way they ride and handle also generally. The INGLO architecture uses a 59 kWh or the larger 79 kWh battery pack seen here. The cells seem to have been sourced from BYD and feature the blade battery technology and cell-to-pack construction. The more upright shape and greater weight make the XEV 90 less efficient, but there is still a good 656 kilometers of range as per the ARAI cycle. So you can expect between 390 to 430 kilometers in the real world. So again, you have a steering setup that is light, easy to drive. It's mainly focused on city driving or the everyday driver. So yeah, it's effortless and really quite easy to maneuver, not that much of an issue. And in terms of the ride, again, you do notice that with these large wheels, there is a slight bit of firmness, and that inherent firmness that you have with EVs. In the brief time that I've spent driving these two cars, this does seem to be tuned a bit softer, a bit more focused on comfort, very marginally. And you do notice that over a broken patch of road, while you do feel it, you do notice the sharp edges, there is a bit more travel in the suspension, I feel, which does give you a better sense of comfort. But that also means that high-speed stability is maybe not as good as the BE60. It's just a hunch. You do notice that you have to make small corrections with the steering wheel, often a bit more in this, or maybe that could be just down to the fact that we're driving on slightly more uneven roads. Now you get 3 drive modes in this: range, everyday, and a race mode or a faster mode, and they work as such. Now the range mode, it's not too restrictive. You can use it in the city. Maybe on the highway it will be a bit too slow instead of bridging that gap between the next car or making an overtake. But otherwise, the everyday mode is, I think you can just put it in that mode and forget about it. And then you also have the regen mode. Now I'm driving it in this auto regen mode, and the idea seems to be to manage regen and power compared to your surroundings. So if there's a car in front of you, it's supposed to ramp up the regen and then free it up when there isn't anything. It is fine, but I do notice that the regen, it goes into regen a bit more sharply than in the other modes. So if it were for me, I would just stick to a regular regen mode, and that would just make the drivetrain a bit more predictable too. Same goes with the braking. Now in this auto mode, it's not quite as seamless, but we would have liked, like I said with the BE60, a bit more feel from the brake pedals. That being said, the cohesion between the friction brakes and the regen is well sorted. So the changeover isn't very abrupt or very sharp. So if you are getting used to driving EVs, it's not that much of an issue. The XEV9e is less outrageous in its looks than the BE6e, but you still find that it does stand out. Yes, it's not quite as taut as the B6e, but you do have a more imposing look with the prominent lighting and the big fascia. The bodywork has a softer edge to the angles, but the long fastback look means that Mahindra has used its nearly 4.8 meter long length well. Now with the XEV9e, you also get a bigger frunk, 150 liters, and I must say this is a pretty sizable space. You have a sub frunk underneath it, which is pretty decent. So yeah, you can put more than just charging cables here for once, and it does do its job. The rear has a long rear roof, although visibility from inside is still somewhat compromised by the rear headrest, but the soft sculpting and rounded edges to the bootlet do manage the mast well. You also have less complex detailing around the bumpers, going with the more grown-up theme. Now, one of the ways Mahindra has used the longer length of the XEV9e, this is 4.7 meters long, the BE6e or the B6e is about 4.3 meters long, is in the kind of space that it offers. Now, you have again quite a large boot, and I must say that this less aggressive coupe shape has helped on the inside as well. So yeah, while the lip is still really quite high, I think it's again a flat square space, reasonably good. And here too you have a spare wheel as well as some space for your knickknacks over here, which is pretty decent. Now you also get a 60-40 split and a few more functions. You have these tie down hooks at each end, a few other hooks around here, and another 12-volt outlet. With the XEV9e, the 207mm of ground clearance doesn't change, and nor do the fun bits like the equalizer themed light show, a feature that lets you monitor the car surroundings like Tesla's Sentry mode, the UV cut glass all around, and NFC entry. As soon as you get inside the XEV9e, now this can't be ignored, this massive widescreen display. Now this whole stack, so to speak, is 43 inches across, and you effectively have three 10.25 inch screens within them. Now this one is specifically for the passenger, and I must say that I can still see it as a driver, so sometimes it can be slightly distracting on the move. It's not completely polarized like how some other cars, some luxury cars have it. But what you do get here is a smattering of functions. You have all those apps. For example, you have your YouTube, even your social apps like Instagram. You can also get your work done and so on. So all of that, music apps, all of that just goes in here. And you can also play your own media, and there's also a browser. So if you want to just go on the internet, you can do that. So mainly it's for the passenger to sort of spend his time. Now this one is again similar to what is in the B6e. So you have this new screen which is quite slick. It has a Snapdragon processor, so the transitions, the responses, they really are fairly nice. So you have navigation controls for the climate, all the drive assistant functions, pretty much everything that you might want to control, the weather, all the connected apps. So all of that you can just control through here. And then this is the driver screen. Now again, it has the new layout, so it has a big central speedo display and these bars that tell you how much range you have and how much performance you have, and your readouts for the range and regen level and so on. And then of course you can change what you want in the screens to either show the navigation or your trip data or your ADAS features and so on. And I must say, while it is fluid and it's brighter than what was, say, in the XUV 700, I do feel that there should have been slightly bigger displays for the range and for your the kind of power output that you're putting out. A few bigger readouts would have helped better, but generally on the move you get used to it eventually. Now this steering wheel is also new. It's slightly different from what you get in the B6e. It has a more rounded shape going with that slightly luxurious theme to it. And yeah, you have the same sort of flat buttons here, that illuminated Mahindra logo, and those buttons to control the regen, which again I think should have been the other way around. Maybe the plus could have been on the minus here. One for the boost function and one to control the one pedal driving. But move past that and you realize that this is familiar. It feels like it is an upgrade of the XEV 700. It's not completely new in that sense, at least the overall design. Maybe Mahindra was going for that feel to keep you still in touch with what the XUV is, but generally I do prefer the more edgier styling of the 6e. Having said that, there is a good deal of premiumness here. You have this stitching here, a lot of gloss black and a few mild sort of chrome finishes and so on. But over this, the textures and finishes again have grown. So you notice there's soft materials here pretty much everywhere you touch. A nice rubberized feel to the handle on the inside, and those new really hefty window switches and buttons over here. That being said, these stocks have been carried over. So yeah, at first glance, you do have a good impression of this space. Having said that, some of the plastics here, while they have improved, you do notice that the gaps could have been a bit more uniform. Maybe the plastic could have gone up a notch, say, from what you get in the 700. Now moving on with this new screen, all the climate functions and all the drive modes are best accessed through here, which I think is slightly difficult on the move. And that opens up this blank space, although Mahindra has tried to sort of use it best with a wireless charger here and another small storage space here and two Type-C chargers. And then you have this lever. We've seen something similar in the 400, but this has again slightly been improved with the stitching and so on it. You will notice that this section itself again reminds you quite a bit of the 700 with the two cup holders and these switches. So yeah, it's a familiar feeling, but Mahindra has tried to make this a bit more upmarket, and I think broadly it has worked. There could have been a bit more in terms of the finishes in the lower half, but I think it is done decently. Now in terms of space, you have a large door bin here which holds two bottles and some other stuff, which is good, and this space here too is pretty large. Now I must say that these seats they look very similar to what was on the 700, but they're not. They again have been worked on. I would have liked a bit more thigh support, but other than that, you have some really nice cushioning here. Of course, they're ventilated, and if you are of a wide frame, then you will like these. They're again a more traditional shape, flatter, so if you're used to that kind of seating, then this will be the one for you. Now in keeping with that new look and the new tech that has come on board, there are quite a few new additions. Now this camera, it's that attention monitor, so to speak, so it knows when you're feeling a bit tired or you're not paying attention on the road. It gives you those warnings. You can also use it to sort of click photos and so on. You have that head-up display. It's not the regular ones that we've seen with the screen in front. It has actual projection on the windscreen, and it does give you information on ADAS and also on navigation. And then of course you have that 16-speaker Harman Kardon audio system, and yeah, so you can see the speakers right here, so that's something new. But I must say that with this coupe shape, visibility is a slight issue. Now the big central headrest, it does sort of eat into your view, so that's something you will have to get used to with the XEV 9e. The XEV 9e is packed to the brim with features, many of which you've not seen in this segment before. Here's what you get. Safety too has taken some big strides forward. There's a new self-park feature that you can use from outside the car, a more advanced ADAS system with better obstacle detection, 7 airbags including a knee airbag, and an interior camera to monitor attention levels. Now while the B6e and the XEV 9e both share the same 2.77mm wheelbase, you do realize that Mahindra has been able to carve out a bit more space in here. Of course, there are a lot of other things, but the space itself also seems to be a bit more, at least the impression of it is that. Now you notice that with the seat, it's sort of pushed back a little bit. You have a slightly more laid back position to it, and these seats are placed a bit higher, I feel, so I have more space under my feet to put my leg in. Leg room or knee room is again slightly more generous, I feel, than the other one. And generally it feels like a much more spacious car here, and again to some extent reminds you of the XEV 700, although things have moved up from there. Now what you do notice is that unlike in the B6e, there is a good deal of thigh support. The seat has been placed higher and the cushion has been brought forward. It's a much longer seat in that respect, so you are definitely more comfortable here. And the bench, it's again slightly more traditionally what we've seen from Mahindra. It's flat, simple. So with that fully flat floor, you can fit a third passenger here more comfortably than in the 6e. And of course you have a separate headrest for them. And also I must say that you also get a pretty neat angle of recline. Now coming to the other bits, there are also more amenities here. You get a sunshade, of course the Harman Kardon speakers, the cup holders or the door pockets, they have fairly decent sized door pockets, and you also have a wireless charger here in the middle. And going with that flow, you get 65-watt chargers for each seat here, and this function to add a device, and there's also this function that we start to like quite a lot, this boss function. So overall, yes, this is the more comfortable car. This is the car that you will want to be chauffeured in if of the two new Mahindra EVs, if you are looking to get yourself one of those. And then of course, to round things off, you have this really large sunroof. The pattern here is slightly different, but again, it has those ambient light etchings on it. And I also must say that with the shape of this car, this slightly more upright, less aggressive shape, there is a bit more headroom, and because of that they've managed to pack in the sunroof a bit better as well. So overall, this does feel like a larger car than the 6C, and generally it feels larger than what you have in the usual compact SUV segment as well. The Mahindra XEV 9e starts at Rs 21.90 lakh, but we don't have prices for the top spec 79 kWh version we drove. We think this will touch close to 40 lakhs, but it must be said that the rear seat experience as well as the tech and features inside give it a sense of value. It has a mature, composed feel from the drivetrain, but we would have liked a better balance between ride and handling. There also could have been a bit more differentiation on the inside in terms of some of the details than regular Mahindra products. But as far as a comfortable EV SUV goes, this makes a good deal of sense.